The year I hit rock bottom, I turned the story's hero gay and sold myself to him. Felix, bitter and insecure from being paralyzed, liked to take his misery out on me in bed. It wasn't until the story's female lead showed up that I saw he had a gentle side. To get the plot back on track, I waited until I'd saved up enough cash, then left him a note and skipped town. A cripple like you can never satisfy me. After a few detours, I escaped to the farthest city I could find. But one day, on my way home, someone pinned me against the wall from behind, a hand gripping my waist. Terrified I was about to get stabbed, I started begging for my life. Then, I heard Felix's lazy laugh in my ear. "Sweetheart, the thing stabbing you from behind isn't always a knife." The wheelchair groaned under the strain. Felix leaned back, the veins on his long neck popping. He held my waist tight, keeping me from pulling away. After a wild session, I was so weak I slid out of the wheelchair and collapsed onto the floor. Felix, however, was still perfectly dressed, sitting there primly. He just reached out, grabbed my neck, and kissed me hard. He stole the very last bit of air from my lungs. After a whole night, he was finally sated, lighting a cigarette with a lazy air. Through the smoke, his eyes were deep, staring right at me. I couldn't read the emotion in them. "Why'd you sell the villa I gave you? Didn't you like it?" His voice was as cold as he was. My mind was a complete blank right then. I couldn't think of anything, so I just mumbled a soft "uh-huh." Felix's lips curled into a smirk. He scooped me up from the floor and sat me on his lap. He always looked so thin, but he could lift me effortlessly. "If you didn't like it, I'll just get you another one. I'll find one you like eventually." He blew smoke in my face. His lips brushed against my ear, a deliberate accident. "Okay, then get me 10 more. I wrapped my arms around his neck, playing the part of the obedient, sweet boy. Felix let out a low chuckle, a genuine smile finally reaching his eyes. "You little gold digger." I snuggled into his arms, giving no sign that I was about to run for the hills. By now, the sky was starting to lighten, spilling into the dark bedroom. After a moment of holding me, Felix's lips were on my neck again, leaving a trail of small bites. He loved to kiss me while holding my throat, watching me gasp for air, watching me cling to him just to breathe. Then came a knock from the housekeeper. "Mr. Felix, Ms. Christina is here." The hand that had just been creeping under my shirt froze. He pulled it back, gave my butt a little pat, and motioned for me to get up. Then he smoothed the wrinkles on his suit, transforming back into the impeccably dressed gentleman. "You can go to sleep. Don't wait up for me." There it was again. It was the 6th time this month that Felix had ditched me to see Christina. He'd unleash all his violent, sticky desire on me, then go play the gentle, caring man for her in a good mood. Right now, in the courtyard outside the window, Christina was walking gracefully toward him in a chic designer outfit. Felix waited for her in his wheelchair, a soft smile on his face I had never seen before. He let Christina take the handles and push him around for a walk. Watching them, I didn't feel the same pang of sadness I used to. Instead, I looked down at the balance on my phone. Felix had always been generous. In 2 years, I'd managed to sock away millions. Enough to live the rest of my life in comfort and freedom. Thinking about my escape plan, my hand trembled. I cursed myself under my breath. "What are you afraid of? Felix is a nightmare to deal with. This money is just compensation for my emotional distress. I've earned it." I slept fitfully, my tears soaking the pillow. In my dream, a pair of warm, rough hands seemed to cup my face. Half awake, memories of the past flashed through my mind like a movie reel. I grew up bouncing around the foster care system and struggled a lot after I entered the real world. During my poorest year, I survived by splitting a single bun for the whole day. That lasted until I applied for the caregiver position for Felix. I stood in a borrowed suit, staring up at the magnificent, ornate mansion as the housekeeper mentioned. "The master has a bit of a temper." I nodded. A golden boy like Felix, losing the use of his legs in a car accident, of course it would mess with his head. I just didn't expect his temper to be that bad. There were a lot of people applying with me. Just as I walked into the study, a girl ran out, sobbing. From inside, a cold, mocking voice drifted out. Don't be so negative. Even if you jumped off a building, no one would care. A guy spoke up, protesting. Mr. Felix, that's a pretty nasty thing to say. That's when I saw Felix sitting by the window. He had a face that could get away with murder. A thin blanket covered his legs, and he sat alone in the shadows. Hearing the guy's comment, he scoffed. Of course it's nasty. I said it on purpose. Why would I say it if it wasn't? The Felix back then was venomous and cruel. He was dismissive of the women and downright brutal to the men. You haven't even looked at our resumes. What makes you think we're not qualified? Resumes? You mean these? Felix picked up a few sheets of paper, laughed, and tossed them on the floor. I don't need to see them. You could just sit on the photocopier and that would be your resume. The sheer humiliation made everyone in the room shrink back. As the guy left, spewing curses and complaints, Felix just leaned back in his chair. If you'd like, I can pay to have those words carved on your tombstone. One after another, more than 10 applicants, afraid of being his next target, turned and left. In the end, it was just me. Felix was finally tired of yelling. He glanced at me, lazily taking a drag from his cigarette. He'll do. And just like that, I became Felix's exclusive caregiver. I helped him with his physical therapy and took care of his every need. I guess I have a thick skin because I never let his sharp tongue get to me. So, Felix was fairly satisfied with me. And underneath his venom and cruelty, I discovered he was a man of contradictions. He would rescue a stray kitten from a downpour. He'd dry it off gently with a towel, then poke its head angrily. Do you just have a head to look taller? Don't you know to run home when it rains? He'd also scoff when I messed something up. What, did you get food poisoning from all that cheap takeout? How could you screw this up? I was shocked. You know I eat that stuff? The director of my old orphanage was seriously ill, and all my salary went to her medical bills. I could only afford cheap takeout for myself. To my surprise, Felix paused, then looked away, flustered. After that, he made me eat every meal with him. He said it was because I ate like a pig, which made the food look more appetizing. So I obediently ate a little more. After a while, from eating so well, I actually bulked up and got pretty muscular. When I bragged that I could deadlift over 200 pounds, Felix asked me why I was so obsessed with working out. I patted Felix's thin shoulder. Because I have to protect you. That was the first time Felix ever complimented me. He turned away and coughed. Leo, you're starting to act almost human lately. I'm so proud. Felix and I got closer and closer. Seeing him tear into more and more people, I started to envy him. God, I wanted to live a life that's sharp-tongued and free. One time, Felix and I were out. A young woman, trying to stage her own cliché romance novel moment, tried to accidentally spill coffee on him to start a conversation. I blocked it with my body. The scalding coffee splashed all over my back, giving me a minor burn. That was the most vicious I had ever seen Felix curse someone out. The girl was left shaking and crying, her romance novel dreams utterly shattered. That night I was shirtless. Felix, his eyes downcast, was applying ointment to my back. I asked him, Felix, do you ever lick your lips? If you did, would you die from your own poison? Felix stared at me, ready to let loose. But I beat him to it and kissed him. His lips, unlike his usual harsh words, were soft, even warm. That night, Felix showed me firsthand the madness that lay beneath his repressed emotions. And with that, I became the one who warmed his bed. When I woke up, the spot next to me was cold. Felix hadn't come back. I checked my phone, then dragged my sore body into the shower. Felix might be a sadist in bed, but he was incredibly generous. The money he gave me saved the life of my old orphanage director. Before I left for good, I needed to see her one last time. On the drive over, the past 3 years with Felix played over and over in my head. I used to think that this kind of life wasn't so bad. Until one day, something calling itself a system found me. Told me I was a bug in this world. I had turned the male lead of a romance novel gay, causing the entire plot to go off the rails. I didn't believe it at first. But then Christina appeared, and everything changed. I had never seen such a bright, radiant woman. She burst into his life like a little sun. She lit up Felix's heart and healed all his misfortunes. And with her, he was gentle and protective, his usual sharp tongue gone. Time and again, I watched the lonely, gloomy Felix get drawn in by her. He let her become his primary doctor, let her move into the mansion, let her into his life. That's when I finally believed what the system said and started planning my escape. When I told the director I was leaving, she stroked my head lovingly. "Leo, you must not be happy here. You should go then." I don't know if it was all the pent-up frustration and sadness from the past few years, or the strangeness of leaving the mansion, but I clung to her and cried my eyes out. Just as I got to the airport, I got a call from Felix. "Where are you?" I clutched my suitcase, feeling guilty. He probably hadn't noticed. Thankfully, Felix didn't press. "Get back early. Don't stay out too late." He probably wasn't home and hadn't seen the note I'd left. "I'm calling to tell you not to wait up tonight. You go ahead and sleep, I won't be back." My heart felt like it was being squeezed by a giant hand, and even breathing hurt. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Suddenly, a woman's sweet laughter came through the phone. It was Christina's voice. It was so close, it was as if she was sitting in Felix's lap. I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I felt a sense of release. "Felix, goodbye." Even though I said goodbye, I knew we would never see each other again. There was a pause on the other end, then Felix's low chuckle. So formal. He lowered his voice, a hint of flirtation in it. "Get cleaned up. See you tomorrow night." That night, I took a red-eye flight and landed in a small, remote town, as far away from Felix as I could get. I threw out my SIM card, deleted all my social media accounts, and got rid of everything that reminded me of Felix. After buying a place, I just vegged out for a month, clearing my head. Habit is a scary thing. I'd gotten used to the hustle and bustle of Felix's house. Now, being all alone felt a little empty. So, I got a cat and opened a small bar in town called Save Soul. In 3 years, my little bar hosted a lot of people. There were backpackers passing through, young people down on their luck, and men and women looking for comfort and connection. I listened to countless stories and learned how to mix drinks and play the guitar. Sometimes I'd get on stage and play a folk song, reminiscing about the past. Felix once told me in bed that I had a face that appealed to everyone, men and women alike. So much so that on the day I applied for the job, he couldn't bring himself to turn me away. It was also how a straight guy became gay. Maybe it was because I was good-looking, and I'd kept up my gym habit over the years, but countless men and women hit on me. Tonight, I handed a whiskey sour I just mixed to a girl sitting at the bar. Her acrylic nails scraped against my palm, her eyes hazy and suggestive. "Leo, I hear the reason you never date is because of an unforgettable first love." First love? For a second, his face flashed in my mind. Then I laughed at myself. It was just a transaction. What was there to be unforgettable about? But you have to move on eventually, start a new life. The girl lectured me, holding onto my hand. For some reason, I felt an intense gaze lock onto me from somewhere in the small bar. It was so hot it made me pull my hand back. I turned down the girl's repeated invitations and just focused on mixing drinks. That night, I went from Long Island iced teas to gin and tonics. By the time I got home, my head was spinning. But before my hand could touch the fingerprint lock, someone pinned me against the wall. Something was pressing into the small of my back. My legs went weak with fear. The crime rate in this small town wasn't great. It wouldn't be surprising if some mugger was trying to rob me at knife point. "Don't kill me. I have money. It's all yours. Just put the knife down. Okay?" The mugger behind me seemed to pause for a second, then chuckled softly, one hand clamping down on my waist. "I'll really give you the money. I swear. Please don't stab me." I was trembling, my voice choked with tears. Hot breath washed over my ear, a tongue tracing its edge. Felix's lazy laugh slowly drifted to me. "Sweetheart, the thing stabbing you from behind isn't always a knife." I turned my head slowly, in disbelief. It was Felix's face. 3 years had passed. He looked like he'd been through a lot. His face was more rugged. What shocked me even more was that he was standing. "Your legs, they're healed?" Felix didn't answer. He just wrapped his arms around my waist and pulled me into his embrace. He held me so tight that I felt that familiar sense of breathlessness again. I struggled to push him away, but then I saw his eyes were a little red, like he was about to cry. He pinched my earlobe, annoyed. "It's your fault for squirming around. Your hair got in my eye." I felt a pang of guilt and gently blew on his eyes. "Is that better?" His answer was a kiss. Feverish, demanding. It swallowed all my questions and words. I was kissed until I couldn't breathe, until all I could do was cling to his neck. He finally let out a low laugh. "Leo, if you don't open this door right now, I'm gonna take you right here." Felix always meant what he said. Fearing the neighbors would hear, I hesitated before opening the door. The second it was open, he swept me up into his arms. Felix kicked the door shut, strode straight to the bedroom, and tossed me onto the bed. In an instant, all the memories of the past came flooding back. I shrank back in fear, but Felix grabbed my ankle and yanked me back. I screamed in terror, "No, don't." Felix, in this kind of frenzied state, I couldn't even imagine how much it would hurt. To my surprise, Felix froze. The next moment, he collapsed onto the bed next to me and pulled me into his arms. That's when I noticed he was covered in sweat. I don't know how he managed to stand again, but it was clear that our little struggle had pushed him to his limit. I had expected Felix to yell at me for running away or punish me brutally in bed. I never imagined this, just being held tightly by him. For some reason, being in his arms made me inexplicably sleepy. Felix just buried his face in my chest, silent. As I was drifting off, I thought I heard a muffled voice. "Leo, I missed you so much," but I'm pretty sure I must have misheard him. Because the next morning, Felix was back to being the same guy I first met. The morning started with a commotion at the door. I groggily got out of bed to see Felix standing in the living room wearing nothing but a towel. Standing at the door was my friend, a look of disbelief on his face. "And you are?" Felix scoffed, then casually pulled down the collar of my shirt to reveal a bright red hickey. He then looked at my friend smugly. Mark's expression slowly froze. I was finally awake but had no idea how to explain. I could only hurry to invite him in. "Leo, I brought you breakfast." Mark held up a bag, his voice low. Felix snatched it out of his hand. "Thanks, man. Next time, hold the onions on my portion, okay?" Mark's eyes widened. "I bought this for Leo. What's it got to do with you?" Felix raised an eyebrow. "What are you, dense?" "The point is that Leo and I have a relationship." The two of them started bickering like elementary school kids. Felix was back to his old venomous self. Seeing that Mark was about to have an aneurysm, I finally cut in. "Felix, one more word and you're out of my house." Felix shut up immediately and meekly went to get dressed. But Mark suddenly latched onto the key point. "Oh, so you're saying you and Leo don't have a relationship, then?" Felix fell silent, his face turning as dark as a thundercloud. For some reason, Felix decided to leech off me. Feeling guilty about taking his money in the first place, I didn't have the heart to kick him out. He claimed he was broke and had nowhere else to go, sounding so pitiful and wronged. I caved and let him help out at the bar. He could stay at my place but not in my room. But having Felix work at the bar was a huge problem. His stunning looks attracted swarms of admirers. In just a few days, 32 different women and men had offered to become his sugar mama or daddy. Felix, smug, came to find me. "Leo, this face of mine is top tier even on the auction block. Aren't you tempted?" I set the shaker I was using on the counter and pushed his encroaching face away. Not at all. Felix and I were from different worlds. The system told me he was only here for a few days. Soon, his character programming would reset, and he'd go back to marry Christina. I mixed drinks, and Felix sat at the bar watching me. A woman dripping in designer logos sat down next to him. The scent of Chanel No. 5 instantly filled the small space. Felix frowned. The woman spoke first. "2 mojitos. One for me and one for this gentleman." She leaned against the bar, her eyes practically devouring Felix. She reached out, trying to touch his face. "Are you over 25? Wanna come with me?" Felix leaned back dramatically to dodge her hand and got straight to the point. "You wanna be my sugar mama?" The woman was taken aback for a second, then placed her Hermes bag on the table with a smile. "Can I?" Felix raised an eyebrow. "Sure, you can. I only require 100 million a month in cash after taxes. Any month with a holiday, that's triple pay. For special occasions, you'll need to gift me a mansion on par with the manor." His voice wasn't loud, but it drew a small crowd. The woman's frown deepened the more he spoke. Someone couldn't help but mutter, "That's a lot to ask. What a gold digger." Felix scoffed and shot back instantly. "If I'm not a gold digger, what am I supposed to be digging for? Your promise to never leave me?" The crowd murmured in surprise. The woman was furious. Just then, I brought the mojitos over. Her eyes lit up, and she grabbed my hand. "What about you? Are you over 25 yet? Wanna come with me?" Before I could get the words "I'm over 25" out of my mouth, Felix glared at the hand holding mine, then yanked it away. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You should probably act normal. I don't think you're rich enough for people to ignore the fact that you're insane." Thanks to his snarky comments that night, I lost a ton of customers. Felix said he would make up for it. During the band's set that evening, the spotlight found him. Felix sat on a stool in the center of the light. A smooth R&B love song kept a lot of people from leaving. As he sang, the light hit the arch of his brow perfectly. At the song's climax, he looked over and winked at me from the stage. The ice ball I was carving slipped and fell to the floor. My hands were freezing, but my heart was burning hot. Caught between these two extremes, I felt lost and confused. In that moment, I knew one thing for sure. I was in love with Felix. I had been for a long time, but fate had decreed we could never be together. Love is made more poignant by its impossibility. That night, Felix sang love songs on stage all night, and I sat at the bar and drank all night. By the time someone came to help me up, I couldn't stand straight and had to lean on them, muttering, "Felix, I want Felix." The person beside me paused, then continued to lead me away. He said, "Felix isn't right for you. Leo, you two are from different worlds. He's just toying with you. He'll always go back to his own world." Mark's words were like daggers twisting in my heart. "Leo, we've known each other for 3 years. I've been in love with you for 3 years. Why won't you even look at me?" Mark's voice was laced with anger. After a long moment, he looked down at my drunken state and started to unbutton my shirt. But the bitterness I'd suppressed for so long finally erupted. I struggled and couldn't stop the tears from flowing. I didn't expect that the moment I started crying, I'd hear the sound of fist meeting flesh. Felix punched Mark square in the face and took me from him. "I'm on stage singing, and you're sneaking away with Leo, you bastard?" Blood trickled from the corner of Mark's mouth. He fought back, not wanting to be outdone. After a few rounds, Mark stopped throwing punches and instead kicked Felix hard in the leg. Felix, who had been full of righteous fury, instantly dropped to one knee. "I knew there was something wrong with your leg. You're a cripple. Do you think you deserve Leo? You damn cripple, go on and get back in your wheelchair." He kept kicking Felix's leg over and over. Still drunk, I suddenly snapped at the mention of Felix's leg. I shoved Mark away and, with red eyes, attacked him like a madman. No one knew better than me how much pain Felix was in when his leg problems flared up. It was a pain that even painkillers couldn't touch. When I finally noticed the blood on my fists, I heard a faint voice. "Leo, my leg hurts." Instantly, I stopped, turned, and hoisted Felix onto my back. The walk home was a clumsy stumble, the wind sobering me up a little. I wanted so badly to ask Felix if he really loved Christina and what he really felt for me, but I didn't dare ask. I was afraid he'd say I was just a fling. Last night, I overheard Felix on the phone. He was going back to his family soon. He wouldn't be staying in this remote little town with me. He would marry Christina and build his business empire, not hang out and joke around with me in a bar. Back at my place, I settled Felix onto the bed. He stared at me, his eyes filled with an unreadable emotion. After a long while, he said softly, "My leg hurts. I know, but I want you. I don't know who kissed who first." Felix lay on the bed, holding my hips and thrusting up into me. Ignoring my pleas, he used all his strength, his voice hoarse as he asked, "Didn't you say a cripple couldn't satisfy you? Tell me, am I satisfying you now?" So he remembered the note. His words threw me back into the past. The dizzying feeling of being tossed into the clouds made me lightheaded. Back then, when Felix's leg pain flared up, it was unbearable. Painkillers didn't work, so he'd pull me into bed with him as a distraction. He discovered I was more effective than any drug. At first, we only did it when his leg hurt, but then, somehow, it became a daily thing. But now, I couldn't tell if he was doing this to ease the pain, or because he loved me. After it was over, I lay curled up in his arms, conflicted. Felix held me while he took a call. It was Christina. She was urging him to return to the city to prepare for the wedding. On some strange impulse, holding onto a final shred of hope, I asked, "Are you going to marry Christina?" "Why do you ask?" Felix took a drag from his cigarette, then exhaled slowly. "Yes, I am." In an instant, I felt like a bucket of ice water had been dumped over my head, chilling me to the bone. I wanted to ask him, "Then what does that make me?" But I couldn't get the words out. "So, when are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning. My leg is acting up. I need to go get it checked out." I slept horribly that night. I dreamed of the novel of Felix and Christina living happily ever after. I felt a private sorrow for the unfairness of fate. But I also felt lucky. Without Felix, I never would have made this much money. I never expected, though, that when I woke up, I would be face to face with Christina. "He made you breakfast." On the nightstand was the breakfast Felix had made for me. Ever since he came to this city, he had taken on the task of making my breakfast. In just over 20 days, he went from clueless to an expert. And now that he'd learned, he was gone. Facing Christina, I was at a loss for words. Guilt, fear, regret. I had ruined her perfect match from the novel. Even though we had met many times before, Christina looked me over, sizing me up. "I knew about your relationship from the very beginning." Right then, I felt as shamefully exposed as the other man caught in the act. All I could do was force out a small aha. After a long look, her gaze drifted to the tulips on the balcony. Her voice choked with emotion. "Do you know how Felix's leg got better? For 3 years, every single physical therapy session was painful and torturous, and I was the one by his side through all of it. Leo, what did you ever do?" Her words made me want to shrink into the floor. After a long silence, I spoke quietly. "Don't worry, I'll leave." Having gotten the answer she wanted, Christina left, satisfied. Felix was only gone for a week to get his leg checked, and then he was back at my door. When he eagerly tried to kiss me, I pushed him away. "What are we? What is this relationship? You're about to marry Christina, so why are you still messing with me? Do I look like a toy to you? Or are you, Felix, planning on having a husband and a wife?" My barrage of questions left Felix speechless. After a long moment, he started to explain. "Leo, it's not like that. It's true I'm marrying Christina, but it's a sham marriage. It's complicated. Can you just wait until I've handled everything, and then I'll tell you, okay?" That day, I ignored Felix's words and shut the door in his face. At first, he kept trying to find ways to explain, but after a few days, he disappeared. The system informed me that the world's narrative had been corrected. The male and female leads were about to face their final trial and would then live happily ever after. And me, the bug in this world, had finally been logged off. My life was finally back on track. And at the same time, I was back to being all alone. Until one day, I was heading to work as usual when I was knocked out and thrown into a van. When I came to, I was in a factory. I looked around. Tied up with me was Christina. I secretly asked the system. I thought I was logged off? Why am I still involved in this? The system was just as confused. Don't worry, this is just the part with the evil villain. The male lead will swoop in, completely unharmed, and rescue the female lead. I paused. Am I going to die? The system went silent. I dunno, my supervisor never mentioned it. Every time a world's plot changes, it can lead to different outcomes, but the world will always try to self-correct. Seeing that the system was unreliable, I knew I had to fend for myself. Just then, Christina slowly woke up. She looked at me, clearly stunned. Soon, a few guys who looked like thugs walked in. The leader froze. Didn't they say to grab the person Felix loves most? Why is there a guy and a girl here? For a moment, the thugs just stood there gossiping about Felix's love life, making the most of the situation. They were still chattering when Felix finally arrived. The most cliché plot twist had finally arrived. The final villain turned out to be Felix's uncle. To fight for the family inheritance, he had arranged the car accident that ruined Felix's legs. After that, he kept a constant watch on Felix, waiting for a chance to kill him. His final plan was to threaten Felix by kidnapping the person he loved. But seeing me there clearly threw him for a loop. He never expected his nephew to have a thing for men. So, the original plot of forcing the hero to kill himself by threatening the heroine turned into making Felix choose between me and Christina. I cursed the system in my head. You guys really went with a plot this melodramatic? The system was meek. I missed that meeting. I had no idea. Right now, the villainous uncle was threatening Felix. You're quite the player, kid. Christina and Leo. One lives, one dies. Choose. The simple rescue mission for the heroine had become complicated because of me. All of Felix's plans were now useless. A gun was pressed to Christina's head, and another to mine. Christina was terrified and crying, sobbing Felix's name. Facing death, I felt strangely calm. I was an orphan, and the only real connection I'd ever had was with Felix. But there was too much between us. We were never from the same world. If I died, I died. It didn't seem to matter much to me. Felix, who was usually so calm and composed, was now panicking. As his uncle counted down, his expression was frantic. At the very last second, when I heard him say Christina's name, I closed my eyes peacefully. The system screamed in my head. The main character's love story is finally complete. I got my course credits. Then it vanished completely from my mind. But unexpectedly, I didn't feel the pain I was bracing for. Amid Christina's screams, Felix collapsed to the ground. His uncle smirked, putting the gun away. Did you really think I'd let you choose? It was your life I wanted all along. In that moment, I don't know where the courage came from. I instantly kicked him in the back, jumped on him, and started smashing his head with a nearby rock. By the time Felix's men arrived, he was rushed to the hospital, and his uncle was sent to the police station. At the hospital, looking at Felix hooked up to all those tubes, I felt like crying. But then I remembered he had chosen Christina. She was the love of his life. Why was I worrying about him? Took half a month, but Felix finally woke up. This time, it felt like the world had changed. The first thing Felix did when he woke up was look for me. He held on to me and wouldn't let go, while I worried he would pull at his wounds. Leo, we can finally be together. After I got with you, I had this strange dream. In the dream, I fell in love with Christina and we got together. But I knew very clearly that I was in love with you. I tested it. No matter how I tried to avoid her, Christina would always just happen to appear by my side, like it was some kind of setting in the world. So I pretended to be with her to go through all the plot points trying to trick the world. This time, when I was on the brink of death, I had a very long dream. In it, I lived out my entire life with Christina. But the me that woke up is finally free. His string of words finally made me understand all of Felix's strange behavior. And I understood the lengths he had gone to for me. The night Felix was discharged from the hospital, he was stuck to me like glue. Because of the shooting, his leg would never fully recover. Even with physical therapy, he could only stand and walk for short periods. When I asked him why he had suddenly started physical therapy, he paused from kissing my ear and then gently bit my earlobe. His voice was low and raspy, because someone complained that a cripple couldn't satisfy him. I knew Felix's 3 years of rehab had been grueling, but I never knew it was all because of one thing I said. Actually, right after you left, I knew where you were, but I was afraid to go find you. Felix's kisses traveled downward, his voice choking up. A bittersweet happiness filled my heart. I tangled my fingers in his hair and let him have his way. Good boy, lie down. That night, Felix gave me a thorough demonstration of what he meant when he said the thing stabbing me from behind might not be a knife. When I woke up, it was already dusk. There was a ring on my finger, a perfect fit. Felix had a matching one on his hand. I asked him, "Is this a proposal?" For once, his ears turned red. "If you think it is, then it is." That evening, Christina came over to have dinner with us and check on Felix's leg. I still felt a little awkward around her, but Christina just waved her hand dismissively. "Don't worry, I'm not in love with Felix anymore. I don't know what came over me before. I was just obsessed with him. I even knew about you two and was willing to be in a lavender marriage with him. A while ago, it was so strange. It felt like I just woke up and my head was clear. Compared to him, I like my career a lot more." Watching Christina light up as she talked about medicine, I suddenly understood. This is what a heroine is supposed to be like. When the world is free from its chains, everyone can finally live as their true selves.